Hi, everyone. I'm Adrienne with Finder.com, and I'm sitting here with Deborah Opry, and we are talking about all things divorce today. So thank you so much for joining me, Deborah.
Great.
So just a quick background. So you're a lawyer, a divorce lawyer, correct?
Yes.
Do you mind just giving me a little bit of background about yourself?
Well, I rarely talk about myself. They usually do the intro, but I guess I have to give myself the intro. Okay. I've been an attorney for over 30 years in Beverly Hills. I've represented all walks of life from the working class all the way up to the celebrities. Represented Kevin Hart, Michael Jackson family, Hasselhoff's wife, and on, and football players and all that. And I've learned in the 30 plus years that I've been doing this, that everyone wants this divorce to be as painless as possible and not too expensive. And sometimes you can accomplish that and sometimes you can't.
Awesome. And what about speed? Is that also an important thing that you found people focus on?
Speed in community property states, it's usually 6 months from when you get the response in on the petition and then you're divorced, but the financial can go on forever.
Okay.
Or the kids all the way till their majority age, 18 years old.
So. Okay. So hopefully today we'll talk about some ways to make all of those three things as painless as possible. So tell me a little bit about the difference between a contested divorce and an uncontested divorce. What can people, a lot of people see that when they do research online, and how do they classify themselves into
It's a
one or
great
the other?
first question. And I'll say this, always go for the uncontested divorce. Try to get the parties to have an understanding and an agreement before something's even filed. Most people say that's not possible. They don't know I'm filing or we're fighting. But there are couples that say, look, the marriage is not working out, and let's just sit down and say, how are we going to divvy everything up? And I believe with George Hamilton, an actor from the past, he sat down with his then wife and they sat down in a diner, I believe, and they worked it all out on paper and it worked perfectly. And for others, you can't come to an understanding because it then moves into the contested area because they're going to fight about everything. If a husband, for example, has $1 million, why should I give you my $1 million? Community property. Well, fight for it. And those battles ensue. But the goal on any divorce is try to get it to be an uncontested divorce as soon as you can. And if you can't, you're going to find out very quickly whether you can or cannot do this.
Okay, great. So uncontested basically means you can come to an agreement together.
Yeah, you get an agreement, you file an agreement together in court and it's done. Versus contested, you're going to be battling everything in court via motions, filings, pleadings, depositions, discovery. And before you know it, guess who's getting all the money? The lawyers.
The lawyers.
So
right.
I tell a client, don't do that. If you can work it out, let's work it out.
So now does that match up with the same thing of the difference between litigated divorce and arbitration?
That is, I don't know where you're getting your questions from, but they're good. Litigation leads to arbitration. The missing word is mediation. If you hire a private judge, you can take everything out of the courtroom where you're waiting forever today. It's very rough. It's very rough sitting in a courtroom, and that's where the charges come from when you're waiting for months. If you hire a private judge, he can arbitrate it. He can have what you call a mini trial in a conference room. And you pay a private judge. You don't pay a judge in the county courthouses that your taxes pay for. But mediation is where you're already in a courtroom and you say, I don't want to stay in the courtroom. We've got to work this out. Let us have a settlement conference, a mediation. Mediation is non-binding if the parties don't agree, and they're in a conference room. The difference between mediation and arbitration is arbitration, the judge is paid to make a final ruling. Mediation is where the parties are with a third-party judge who will say, this is what I recommend, and they take it or they don't. And litigation, it's a battle royale till you get to the courthouse with the judge. No juries in divorce in California.
Okay. And now is arbitrated divorce, can you do that online?
They're starting to do that. They're
Okay.
starting, and you know, with the way things are going with the COVID, and we'll talk about that later, I'm sure, everything's happening online. Every court hearing today is mostly online, either by audio or video. And that's the new world. So an arbitration, a mediation, litigation, it could be online. And in most instances, because of COVID, it is online now.
Great. So you recommend that, you know, I got divorced earlier this year, and even though it was very collaborative and very amicable, there's still moments where it gets really emotional, and I can see how a lot of divorces devolve into conflict. And so your recommendation is if you can stomach it, try to keep it amicable so you can go the uncontested route.
Well, the courts want you to be amicable. But, you know, let's face it, there are some people, and this is for men and women alike, they are pissed, excuse my vernacular. They are upset that the marriage is over, or that not a lot of money is being offered, or why am I paying for everything? And they want a battle royale, because in many instances, they need to clear the air emotionally. Subconsciously, and you know this because you went through it, even it was collaborative, when you go into a divorce mode, it is the end of something. It is a death. It's a death of love. And that is tragic. Some people say that is worse than the death of a parent or a sibling, because it is the death of someone you obviously loved, and it's forever gone. And my approach has always been, if you can stay on a nice friendship basis where there are children, especially, it's going to work. In one of my high-profile celebrity cases, I said, what is it worth to you to constantly have her dragging you into court for more money? Give her money. Make it easy. Work it out between you, so instead of her calling her lawyer first, she calls you. And if you're
Exactly.
Yeah, and if you're generous enough, at some point in time, she's going to say, I pushed too much. And it's working even today, years later.
Wow. Yeah, it's really feels like a true grieving process going through it.
Not to, I don't want to become the interviewer, but how long ago was the divorce final?
In June. So basically, we did it online, and I started at the beginning of the month, and we met with a private judge at the end of the month, and it was all done before then. But like you recommended, we worked out the agreement completely beforehand, just in a spreadsheet.
And I hope you guys are still on talking terms.
Yeah, we're still good friends. So it hurt a lot, but a lot less knowing that I could retain that friendship. So.
And you're both winners in the end, because you may grow up at a later point and have a different kind of and more better friendship. You don't know.
Exactly.
Life is unpredictable. Take it
All right. Exactly. So Deborah, can you tell me about some of the unexpected costs of divorce that people might not think about when they get started?
Yes, private investigators when things are being hidden, forensics experts for financials when they're hiding funds, information in terms of when you're going into a court and you're preparing for a trial or a mediation, you've got to have expert testimony, records reviews, and that means these unexpected costs are, I'm paying all of this, and what am I going to get for it? So the best thing to do in advance, and I don't mean to blend the different questions coming, but the unexpected costs are always gauging the financials and fighting it out in a courtroom. So how do you avoid both? One, before you even go to an attorney, have all of your financials copied. You do the calculations. And I always tell a client this before they come to see me. Email me a narrative, a summary from the day you met to the day it was over, with everything. What did you invest in? Where did you go? Da, da, da. Because when you read this narrative, this story, you know what to tell the client. Oh, you're going to have to watch for this. You're going to have to watch for that. They could be hiding money, a lot of assets here. They're going to fight. So the main thing is information. Knowledge is power. So the unexpected costs are when the attorney doesn't have this information and they have to go get it and they have to have it evaluated. Expert testimony when you're going into trial on a family law case, child custody, therapists who are going to review the custodial workings, how each parent gets along with a child. That's unexpected. Most parents, and it usually works where the husband, who is the out husband out of the house, he will say to the wife, I want 100% custody. Now, this is not because he wants 100% custody, but he knows that the custody is the most important thing to a mother. So he'll fight that and keep her fighting it, and we need a 7:30 evaluation, which is a custodial evaluation. These are unexpected costs, and each expert can go $5,000 on up. It's not unknown, 20 to 35,000 in unexpected costs for experts.
Wow.
Because a husband or a wife said, I want 100% custody. And the court will say, this is going for an evaluation. And you're like this, what happened? And then a minor's counsel being assigned to a child to represent their interests because they're teenagers and they can't stand what either parent is doing. They love what both of them are doing. But in each instance, the unexpected costs come because there is not an agreement, because they know there's going to be a battle in that forum.
So even if you're prepared to hire a lawyer and go to court, the fees and all of these extras can easily escalate into something that you weren't really prepared for if you don't understand that it could get that high going into it.
Absolutely. And if there's no meeting of the minds between the parties, and if one attorney is wanting to ratchet up the billings, because you meet attorneys like that. It's like, I'm going on a holiday. This will pay for it. And it's sad. It's actually very tragic. And I don't do that. And there are a lot of people who do. And when you have to be in a conference room or a courtroom with these people, knowing they're creating these battles just to ratchet up the fees and the court time, because court time is the highest billable, it's a very tragic thing. So the best thing to tell the clients to keep the unexpected high costs down, keep the battle down.
Okay.
Reduce the conflict, and don't make it so contentious.
So that's especially great if you're working with a lawyer. Know enough to know what to do.
Listen, you wouldn't do your own surgery, would you?
No.
Okay.
That's true. So for couples where the divorce is particularly straightforward, maybe they don't have kids or they don't have a lot of assets or debts to split up, how can you do it without a lawyer?
Well, I guess it's what you yourself did. You sit down, you collaborate, you basically say, we have a house, we have cars, we have jewelry, we have so much money in the bank, we don't have kids. If you have kids, you're going to have to really have an attorney. I do not play the game with children because anything can happen. Unless they say 50-50, we'll share all the bills for the kids, but usually you have attorneys when there's child custody issues. But when there's assets and both parties are open, really open, and they put everything on the table and you know they're not hiding anything, then it's like, just write it out in agreement, sign it, and we can get a court personnel, attach it, a paralegal, attach it to a form and file it. That's the cheapest way to go. What I don't want to do is dissuade people from hiring an attorney. If you have really next to nothing, you're leasing a car, you're renting a house, you have no savings, you have a lot of debt, everybody takes their own debt and moves on with their lives. Why are you going to pay an attorney to sit down and say, you all have nothing, and whatever you do have, you have to pay me? It's just, there's no point in it. So work it out. And you can do any online forums. They have lots of stuff right now with that. I don't agree in every instance that you should do something online. And any person who's out there saying, here's the forms, here's this, here's that, you always have to have it checked out anyway. Okay? Right. But it depends how much you have. If you have a lot of assets, you don't want it screwed up.
Exactly. And for a small legal fee, to have that peace of mind that it's all been double checked is absolutely going to be worth it to a lot of couples.
That's right.
Great. So what advice do you have for couples who can't find the space to be amicable or reduce the conflict? Is there any way to avoid litigation in a contested divorce?
It is a double-edged sword, the question you ask, because if it's a contested divorce, it's a battle. And it's like going into a courtroom and not knowing the rules, but you're going to go in there and have a battle. And you have no ammo. because you don't know the rules. You don't know the rules of the engagement. And there's Sun Tzu, The Art of War. You have to know your enemy. You have to know the person you're having a battle with, and don't engage in the battle until you know everything and know how to win. So anyone who flies by the seat of their pants, an old expression, and you say, I'm going to go into court and I'm going to tell the judge everything. And there are people doing it. Halle Berry, for example, my understanding is that she is now representing herself. I mean, she might have had it with attorneys. Or she might say, I'm not paying anymore, or for whatever reason, I can do this myself. I've lived in a courtroom so long. But most people, before you go into a battle, and a contested divorce litigation is a battle, before you go in, you have to understand the battle. And if nothing else, consult with an attorney. If you go in and say to an attorney, this is how much I have in assets, because that's the first question they ask, and this is my story, and you've emailed them a 2-3 page summary of the relationship and from meeting until when it was over, they'll have an understanding of what to tell you. And there are a lot of attorneys, and the good ones especially, who will say, you don't need an attorney. Work it out. And there are a lot of attorneys out there who will say, how much am I going to make on these people? And that's the attorney you don't want to hire. You don't want to sit down with an attorney who tells you we're going to fight, we're going to win, and . A good attorney will say, in my opinion, let's see if we can work it out with the two parties. Let's see what's out there. Give me this. I'll write a letter. We'll see if they have an attorney. If they don't, we'll see what they want to do. And then there are absolutely people out there who come into my office who say, you file, I want to shock him or I want to shock her. File it, get it done. I don't want to hear anything more until the divorce is done. She doesn't get what she deserves. I want to fight. And I'll say, community property state, if this goes to trial, she's going to get, the money will be spent before she ever gets her hands on that. I've had clients like that too. So, long and short of it is, it always goes down to the two parties.
Okay.
Okay.
So you have covered a little bit of this before, but just to recap, what is some of the homework that couples can do before they go into that first meeting with a lawyer? You mentioned a narrative and getting the finances all organized. Is there anything else that couples can do to really prep before they enter into this whole process?
I tell a client 5 things. First is email me a summary, a narrative of the relationship from the minute you met them to the moment the marriage was over. 2, make copies of all the financials, credit card statements, bank accounts. I want to have deeds to the properties. I want to know everything that you own with your spouse and what you own yourself. And, under the narrative, it's when you bought stuff. The third thing is, I say to them, when you are coming into the divorce world, it is forms, mostly forms, as you yourself know. And what I usually do with them is I send them, in California, schedule of assets and debts. I send them family law interrogatories, which are questions. It helps them familiarize, the disclosures, the things you have, the things you bought. Whose is it? Is it both of ours? Is it yours? Is it mine? Everything. And you fill in these forms, you give in the financials, you give in your story. And then after this is reviewed, the fourth thing I tell a client is, I believe it will work out amicably. I believe there's not much to fight over. Or I'll say, from what you're telling me with this personality of your spouse, this is going to be a battle. So this is what I recommend we do. Now, the fifth and most important thing I'll always say to a client, this is what a value of a divorce that will last this long, these many months, without the discovery, without the motions to compel, without the depositions, without the experts. If you can agree to it, you're saving this. If you can't agree to it, these are the extras, what we spoke about, the unknown. These are the unknowns. These are the things you may not expect, but which are coming. They are coming if you guys don't work it out. And I always, always will tell, as soon as I can, both sides, who's going to be making the money here? Us as lawyers, or are we going to try to get them to be done with this soon? There are lawyers who don't care. There are lawyers who do care.
That's really great that you have those values of wanting it to be painless and affordable.
I'm not
for the
rich
couple.
because of it, but I'm certainly, when I go to sleep at night, I sleep very soundly.
Right, exactly. So you touched on it lasting an X number of months. How long is the typical contested divorce in comparison to an uncontested divorce?
An uncontested divorce will last 6 months till you have an entry of a divorce. It takes 6 months in California from when filing. A contested divorce can take years. You could be fighting over child custody for the full length of the child's minority age. Usually it's 18 years old, sometimes 19 years old, till the child reaches majority age. You can be in a courtroom for well up to 18 years, okay?
Wow.
As far as finances, you can fight for years about it. For years.
What's the longest divorce you've ever worked on?
My average, I can give you my average. My average is about 2 years.
Okay.
It's contested.
Wow.
That's
a long time when you think about it.
But the courts are speeding it up now, and I think with the online and the Court Connect, we call it out in Los Angeles, I think judges are moving things much faster.
Okay. So what other tips do you have for couples during this period of, we're in this global pandemic, the courts are super backed up. What other advice do you have for couples who may be having to cohabitate right now during this time?
The tension and the home life environment is the first thing that goes. It's the first thing that went with the COVID. When you're with someone around the clock, there's going to be problems, even in the best situations where you love each other. It's like, I need some breathing room.
Right.
With the divorces, I really am worried about the domestic violence. I'm worried about the increased usage of the opioids, the alcohol. I don't want children, and I don't want to get emotional, but I don't want children to have to suffer the follies of their parents, and they usually do. So I believe that when a marriage is in trouble, one party has to get out. They have to get out, because the tension is attention is attention. And as soon as the parties can bring down the conflict, bring down the horrible, the yelling and screaming, bring that down to the point where they can speak to each other. And the children must always see the parents speaking to each other. When they see them yelling and screaming, the kids are going to have issues. And
Right.
Number one focus of a family that's breaking up because of a divorce is that the children have to come first. So one of the parents has to go. And if they can't afford to leave, they're going to certainly have to go to another end of the house. And if the house is too small, then they're just going to have to go to a family member or a friend until all of that conflict wears down. In the end, we are all human beings. In the end, people, if they don't love each other anymore, they have to resolve to end it efficiently, quickly, and without the stress. Yelling and screaming and throwing and hitting and verbal abuse, it's not going to solve a problem. It's like putting a match to a kerosene lamp without the wick. All right? In every instance, everyone has to make sure that they just keep the conflict down. And if somebody is unable to do that, they have to leave the house. That's it.
Great. That's great advice. As soon as to just get it started, because you just need to get it over and get out. And that's exactly what happened to us. I just read some article. It was May, I think. I read some article about how the pandemic might take 2 years and a vaccine might take 2 years. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can't wait any longer. I just can't hang out here for 2 years. So I guess I'm going to get divorced and move in a global pandemic. So, the efficiency is really, really key there.
That's the key word, efficiency. You have to have efficiency of your emotions, efficiency of your finances, and efficiency of the way you approach the ending of a relationship. That's it. You have to be efficient in the use of your time in this lifetime. Because, listen, Adrienne, I'm a little older than you, and I'm telling you, I've seen it all. And in the end, your home has to be your Shangri-La. That's it.
Absolutely. And if that means getting out and carving out a new one for yourself, do it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a little bit about, we've talked a lot today about conflict, keeping conflict down, how easily tensions can rise, how emotional this whole process is. What advice do you have for couples to try to reduce the conflict and bring tensions down? And when everything can seem very, very emotionally amped up, how can you start to let it simmer enough to be able to get something done?
Well, my sister, when she was dealing with her 2 young children, had a phrase that I know every parent is aware of. It's called timeout. Couples have to take timeouts. Leave the room, just separate from each other, do your work, go work in the garden, go out for a walk. There has to be a timeout. And the only way you can keep conflict down is by treating yourself, in many instances, like a child. I don't need to, I don't want to deal with this. I need a timeout. Not you need a timeout. I need a timeout. Walk away. When you go to marital counselors, they always say that. In my experience, they've always said, just walk away. Walk away from the situation until things calm down. Leave the house, leave the room. And if the other spouse is chasing you down and banging on the door, leave the house. Because once police start getting involved, it's a whole nother.
Then it gets really complicated, right?
It becomes domestic violence. And you enter the law enforcement world, and I don't think you want to do that.
Right. Yep. So everything just comes back to that, try to keep it.
You are as good in this world as the approach you take to problems. A marriage breaking up is a problem. How are you going to approach the problem? If you have sufficient funds and you can't deal with the problem yourself, hire an attorney. Just make sure the attorney is not looking to you as a payday. Make sure they're looking to you to resolve your problem for the best price possible. That's the biggest thing that I would ever tell a family law client. This breakup is a problem. How are you going to solve it? Are you going to solve it by destroying everything in your wake? Or are you going to solve it by walking away? And if there has to be a little compromise, are you going to solve it that way? And in the end, Adrienne, the client makes that decision. So if you're a client that is someone who wants to fight, it's there. If you're a client that wants to be done with this, you want to preserve the relationship of your children, which I've had clients telling me that, and they want it resolved and they want it done, it's done. I don't make the decisions for clients that they're going to settle or not settle. The only decision I make is, these are my recommendations. This is what you want. This is what will happen. What do you want to do? And the only decision I ever make for myself is it time to walk away from this client because you can't help them? Or is it time to maybe get a little bit more in their face and say, you've got to make up your mind? It's a different story for every couple out there. It's like a fingerprint. No two couples are alike. And any attorney who tells you, oh yeah, this is the run of mill, it's not true. Every marriage is different. It's like a fingerprint. So therefore, every divorce has to be different, like a fingerprint.
Right. So what advice do you have for couples for life after divorce? I know that I wasn't really prepared for, right. I wasn't really prepared for all of the feelings. Once it's over, you kind of enter into this new mental state, and I haven't been single in a very long time. It was really hard to get used to. What advice do you have for couples when they're still very much in that grieving process and now it's over.
Well, Adrian, as a divorce attorney, I don't see you having any problems going forward in a love life or in a relationship. You'll be fine. But most people, when the relationship is over, I tell them to take some downtime. Figure out what you want, figure out where you want to be and who you want to be with. And you don't define who you are by who is attached to you, who's hanging on your arm. You just don't. People have to get to know themselves. And I can make suggestions and say, take some time off, or, have some quality time with your kids, or get a pet, go visit family, just be on your own. There are a lot of people who are giving themselves 6 months to rediscover themselves. Well, before the COVID. And
Right.
Now COVID, once there's a divorce, you're pretty much on your own, except for your small groups of social distancing. With this COVID, I do believe we're going to be going into next summer. I believe whatever the vaccine is, it probably won't be mass distributed until next summer. At least that's what I'm hearing from people I think are in the know. But as it affects couples and divorces, I think people should use this time to really shut down, go inwards, and get to know themselves. Because there are a lot of people who don't know themselves. And there are a lot of people who, who are very young, who get divorced, and they wake up one day and say, I thought I had it all figured out. What happened? Life happened. Life is a blank canvas. It's a book, and you're writing it, you're painting it. And every time you put another color on the canvas, and every time you turn the page and start on a new page, it's something new. And there is no map. There is no plan that we're supposed to know. Things happen. And as life evolves, you want different things. And I don't know how long you were married. I'm assuming it wasn't long.
We were together for 15 years, and so our marriage was 10. So it was.
That's a long marriage.
Yeah. So like you were saying before, getting to know yourself. I've been with a partner since such a young age for such a long time. I'm really struggling with that right now because I'm thinking, who am I now? I'm an adult. I'm on my own for the first time, and how do I get to know myself? And so that downtime is really great advice.
Well, I would speak to you now as a friend, and I would say, as a divorce attorney, talking to a friend, you were very young, and you're not that person anymore. And what a hell of a future you have, because you have a strong foundation. You didn't go from person to person, relationship, marriage to marriage. There are people who like to do that. But you have, in my opinion, a very strong foundation. And I think anyone who comes out of a long-term marriage, and yours was, and the long-term relationship, the fact that you were with somebody for 15 years, they're not gone. They didn't die. You just have a new path to go. Right. And I think it's very exciting. I mean, I'm actually excited for you.
Thank you. That is great advice, by the way, because taking that time to get to know yourself is just so important when you feel like there's not a lot, when you feel like you're losing so much of yourself. It's defining yourself by your partner can be really easy, especially when you get together young or you're together for a very long time. And so trying to imagine that world without them can be.
Don't imagine.
Exactly.
Don't try to imagine. Don't even waste that time and effort. What is it going to be? It's not going to be anything you imagine.
Even though my divorce was amicable, I still felt a lot of that anger in the beginning. Anger for myself, anger for my ex, anger at the entire situation that it was even happening. And what do you recommend ways to kind of, maybe get rid of some of that anger so that you don't take it out on your spouse or the children or the pets?
It's every single person that is going through an emotional trauma, and divorce is trauma. My mom died of COVID in July.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And how people saying, how are you doing? Somebody else said, everybody loses their parents, and no one can tell you anything. No one can tell you anything to make you feel better. And that's the same in divorce. So you have to go inwards. Exercise, I believe in it. Tom Cruise, he is a big believer in getting those endorphins up. I agree with that. I think long walks, getting a pet if you don't have one, and loving that pet, because everyone needs to give love and to receive love. And you want unconditional love, you look in a dog's eyes, all right? And as simple as my solution sounds, and I'm not being flippant about it, but when you go inward to deal with that trauma, that hurt, the divorce, by going inwards, you basically have a form of meditation. I'm a big believer in YouTube. There is a video out there for everything. And you want to deal with divorcing couples, go on YouTube. It's not that misery loves company, but you notice in therapy groups, people who lost a child, people who got divorced, people who've had cancer, there's support groups. There's a support group for everything, but start off on YouTube, just going through the videos. And anyone who says, how do I get through the divorce? A day at a time, a step at a time. And don't do the alcohol, don't do the numbing routine. Exercise, work on yourself physically and mentally, and let your attorney do their job for you if you have an attorney. If you can afford an attorney, hire an attorney.
So last question for you, Deborah. What is any final words of wisdom that you might have for couples who aren't really sure what path to take, and they're doing all this research online and they aren't sure if they need to go contested or call a lawyer or go online or private judge? How do you recommend that they make a decision that's right for them?
Step one, when you decide that the marriage is over, educate yourself. Go online, just educate yourself with people who've gone through divorces. Call an attorney. Just talk to an attorney on the phone. Talk to somebody who went through a divorce. Educate yourself. And then when you get to the point where you say, I need a divorce, this is over, how am I going to do it? You go in and you sit down and you pay for a consultation. That's it. It's cheaper to get the information from a professional than it is to get information from someone who's going to say to you, oh, I didn't know. I'm not a lawyer. Educate yourself. And this too shall pass. Everything will pass. And in the end, whatever I tell a client, in the end, I say, you deserve to be happy. And that's really what life is about, because you're here such a short time. That's it. It's been a pleasure, Adrienne.
That's great advice. Thank you so much for joining me today, Deborah. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I know our users are going to get a lot of valuable information out of this. So thank you so much.